Welcome, everybody, to the 88th episode of the My Generation podcast. We'll be talking to a returning guest today. We're talking about being an extra on a feature film set. Not too long ago, on episode 80 of the show, we spoke to Aaron Frith. We were talking about his swing singing, and right at the end of that episode, just as we were wrapping up, he dropped the bombshell that he's been an extra in the films 1917 and Christopher Robin. And here today, he'll be sharing his insight on what it was like on those sets, as well as your regular weekly features from Sammy Bacon, Harry Monday, Emma Cusson, Joe Finnegan, and Tom Axtell. All of their features coming later in the show. But now, welcome back, Aaron.
Hello, you alright?
Yeah, very well. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, all good, mate. All good. All as best as you can be in this time.
Yeah, it's a odd time. So I hope wherever you are listening at the moment, as and when this episode has come out, I hope you're keeping safe and well. We're for context of you listening, we're recording this on the 8th of June. So today, obviously, we're speaking about what it was like on those feature film sets, and I wanted to start firstly with 1917 because it was a film that I saw in cinemas and got quite passionate about. And following the last podcast, Aaron showed me a photo of the frame he's in from within the movie. It's really awesome to see. What was it like working on that film set?
Honestly, it's the best film I've been a part of out of the ones I've been a part of. The set was massive. You had to get there obviously really early in the day as extras because it was long day shoots. Because obviously I'm from Harrietsham, and this was filmed in Hemel Hempstead. This one scene, it was literally the first scene of the film where he's walking through the trench, and where I was located, it was on once they eventually get to the front line. You literally see me for a millisecond. But as I was saying, the set was absolutely ginormous. It was in this abandoned airfield, and they dug up this trench, which I think was about the size of 3 or 4 football pitches in length.
Wow.
It was absolutely massive. So like I said, you had to get there really early because we had so much makeup to do. Getting our costumes, you'd get there at about 5 o'clock in the morning. They supply you all breakfast, a lovely full English breakfast and buffet and all that, really nice stuff. And then as soon as you had it, they did it in like parts of the trench. So if you're in part 4 of the trench, they'd call you to do your makeup and that, because it was all go from the start. So you had to stay on time. Be in makeup for about an hour, getting your costume. As soon as you're done, you're a bit of waiting about because they're slowly getting everyone else into trench. Once it's your call, as you're making your way to the trench, there was a guy who, on your like induction day, he was an army guy, and he taught you how to all stay in a group and march together. So it was all getting you right into the roles and all that. And also talking about induction, because they was all. I don't know if you watched any of the behind the scenes of how they did it, but if you had, they said there was a lot of waiting around and rehearsing because the lighting wasn't correct. So on those times we would be practicing like army drills, so like crawling,
wow.
And jumping and sprinting, getting him told how to hold the gun properly and all of that. Even though we wasn't even going to be doing it in the shot, it was just getting us into the part. And then once we were in the trench, we was in it all day. There wasn't times to go back to the tent to be in the warm, because the time we filmed it was February time, so it was really cold. And what you saw on the movie when they poke their head out and it's no man's land, that is literally it. That's not CGI. That is what it looked like, and it went on for miles. I cannot explain how good the set was. It made you think what it was like. It must have been like as a World War I soldier.
Well, yeah, I mean, just watching it from an audience perspective, I did look into the behind the scenes from a camera perspective, and you could tell how much attention they were putting on the lighting, because obviously there are a few hidden cuts in the movie. It emulates a one-take film, but there are hidden cuts.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Trying to balance the light, because you need it to be almost identical from shot to shot, otherwise it's noticeable. I had no idea, though, that during those breaks that they were sort of doing all that training. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy. The amount of rehearsals we'd be doing all day. I mean, I did about 6 days, and it was literally just the one shot we were doing. But in those days, it was rehearsal after rehearsal after rehearsal. So I'd be working, we'd probably be shooting from 9 o'clock, I'd say, all the way to 7 o'clock. Now, some of that one of the days, none of them might have been the actual shot. It would have been rehearsals, because, like you said, there was hidden cuts. They had to get that bang on for it to look right, as you would know yourself. So yeah, it was hard work, but totally worth it. And it really was cold, but they really catered you well. Don't get me wrong, they were giving us food all the time because we was in the trench. My feet, I thought I was starting to get what was it? Is it foot trench or something like that?
Oh yeah, trench foot. Yeah.
Trench foot. Because it was the thick mud, and these were proper. I tell you, the research into this all. Once you're in the tent, you see there's thousands of pictures of these World War I soldiers, and it was literally on to the spot. It was in detail. So everything you can imagine in the set, in the costume, was all spot on. So when all the mud sticking to your boots, you're in that for 12 days. In the winter, it makes your feet. I couldn't feel my feet. And then we'd have like these every probably I'd say about 50 meters, little metal tin where they put fire in, and that was it. That was the only heat you had. There was nothing else you could heat yourself up in. They gave you these little hand warmers, but that was it.
Wow, and that makes it feel almost so much more realistic as well, because you're in the environment, and as even someone who's just sort of coming up through film, I'm realizing how important catering is as a thing. I mean, I'm heading into my third year, and for our third year film, we're already planning the catering side of our production early, because even on our second year film, even just working with sort of 15 or 20 people, you've still got to make sure they're fed all day, and so. I mean, how many people were sort of there around you? It must have been a massive crew.
Cool. I reckon, this is just an estimation, I reckon there was 300, 400 people there.
Wow.
Including crew as well. So I reckon it's a massive project. It was. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't just the trench scene what was filmed there. I think... spoilers alert for whoever hasn't seen it, the bit where you see the plane go through the barn, that scene was filmed there somewhere else in the field, because this is a massive airfield, so lots of space, obviously to have two different sets. I'm probably wrong there, but I'm pretty sure I saw something when I was there which rewatching the film, I recognised it. But like you said, back to the catering, they have to cater it, especially with that amount of people, when spending in that time. You've got to keep them happy.
Yeah, and that actor, crew relationship is honestly some of the most important things I've seen on a film set, and that must just translate all the way up. Yeah. I mean, I did actually want to sort of ask you about, who was some of... I imagine you got to speak with a lot of people whilst you were there about so many different things, but did you get to speak to anyone sort of in the main crew that was sort of having quite influential roles over the film at all?
Well, we were right in... I never got to speak to Shawn Mendes. He was very obviously in the role, but all the other assistants, directors, they were all in costume as well. So they were good at letting us know what was going on in the shot and that. And they would tell us what they're doing whilst they're recording. We just came. It was quite funny, because we just came along and had a look at the shot as they were going back through it, seeing if it was good. Now, any other set, I doubt that would be allowed, because it's all very private, and it's the extras are the extras and the crew are the crew. But it was like they were so comforting and just like, yeah, come have a look at this. It was like, oh yeah, that's a good shot, and then we just do it all again. It was just a really nice atmosphere. Everyone got on really well, and they just and that's the best thing, really. That's because if they get on well with us, then we want to do the best for them.
Well, that sounds like a really nice relationship to build up, and the fact that they were so warming even to the extras, because I imagine there were quite a lot of you as well as a massive group, so making you all feel welcomed is so difficult, but sounds really, really incredible. I did want to ask about some of the things you then learned. So what were some of the key lessons you took away from these 6 days?
It made me really have an in-depth of what it was like being filmed, because you always watch it, you never really know what the details will go through, because I've only done it at school. I've not done like the detail of what you've done, but all the getting together with the assistant directors, communication, what goes on, the takes, the rehearsals, that's definitely a learning progress. And speaking to everyone else, like all their experiences, there's a lot of them that did so many more films than me. I've only done 3 stuff, but some of them that is their job, like being an extra and just standing about. So, and it's made me learn to be very patient with it, and because it's a long day and you've got to be committed to be an extra, you've got to be wanting to be there. Don't just do it for the money, because the money it's good money, but it's even better when you're doing it because you're enjoying it. Don't do something if you don't enjoy it, because it's tough. It is tough. It might sound easy walking one spot to the other all day. That might sound easy, but after doing it for 5-6 days in a row, getting up really early, driving there, and then driving back really late and doing it all again the next day, it takes its toll. So it's a tough business to be a part of, but if you enjoy it and you love film, then you'll be fine.
The length of the days, it feels almost like nothing else exists outside of the film, because you must be getting up at sort of 4 in the morning, 3-4 in the morning, and then not getting home until sort of 8-9 p.m. And I know you're an extra. I've spoken with someone who's quite high up in location for sort of feature films, and it's even the location people are some of the first on set, because they've got to be the ones to make sure everyone's using the right plug sockets, knowing where everything is on the location, and you can almost have only about sort of 6 hours that isn't on set time, which is incredible. But what would you say were some of the key things that helped you, other members of the crew, and other film extras sort of get through the fact that it's such a long process?
Well, definitely if I was to give you advice of being an extra and how to get through it, you got to, as soon as you got to make your friends. You got to keep yourself going. Don't keep yourself to yourself, because it will be the slowest days. It just goes quicker talking to people, finding out their stories, and then soon enough the day goes on. But I think 1917 was different. It felt longer because it was one shot the whole 6 days. Whereas when I did Christopher Robin, we had multiple shots to do. They actually laid out the plan of what we were going to be doing each day. So it was like, we've done that shot. We've done that shot. We've only got one more shot, so they might let us go home early, because that's what it feels like. Because it drags on ages, because you're walking back and forth. So it does feel like, we're going home. We've done our day's work. No one really wanted to stay late, because obviously you want to get back early as possible, get your sleep, so you're feeling better the next day.
Yeah, and with 1917, as you said, such a different experience to any sort of normal film, because that amount of time, you only need to sort of get it right once. Whereas with, I imagine sort of more of a traditional style of film, there's a lot more variety. So having people to speak to on set, just dialogue and communication is such a massive part of film. Now, I have some questions for Christopher Robin next. We're going to be going to Sammy and Harry's features in a moment, the music and film review segments of the show. But before we do, I just had one more question, which is, did you get to speak with any of the main cast at all?
Yeah, we had a little I've forgotten the actors' names, but the two main characters in the film, they obviously they would walk past us, as though there'd be shots just where I was. It was one of the hidden cuts, so it started right where we was. So they were just hanging about, and they were really, really nice guys, just genuine guys. They weren't like, oh, take me back to my tent. I want that and that. Well, as you'd imagine, like all the film and the Hollywood stars would be. They were just like ordinary guys having a chat with us, and that's how it should be, because at the end of the day, they're acting and they've got the lines, but we're doing the same stuff as them. We're on set all day. We're doing the exact same parts as them, except they've got the lines and they've got the main characters. We're making the piece as well for them. So you've got to get on with each other to make it a better experience. But no, but they was great. They were, and they, funny enough, they were not much older than me, so it was nice to have a chat with them.
Yeah, and in interviews they've both seemed sort of really down to earth, because they've been in some big stuff, but they aren't really sort of, I wouldn't say Hollywood level yet.
No, yeah.
But they're definitely getting there, and that's for those of you who've seen the film, it's George Mackay and Dean Charles Chapman, the two main characters. Did you sort of get to pick their brains at all about, you know, what it was like for them on set?
Well, we tried to as well, but I think they were very much, although they were having conversations with us, they were very much being professional and focusing on the role, because at that point in the film, it was quite a serious bit. It was he's just found out that they need to save his brother, so they were talking to us, but also trying to stay in character as well. But even just talking to us, that's enough.
And obviously, your scene is quite close to the moment they meet Colin Firth's character. Were you on set with him at all?
No. So I think where I get seen, they've literally just met him, and it's a couple of minutes after coming out, so they're on the rush to go and find their brother already, and they literally it's just up. I think if I was further up the trench, I would have seen my girlfriend's favourite actor. I can't remember. He was Moriarty in Sherlock, but he's quite a famous actor. So I think if I was more up the trench, we probably would have met him.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Well, I've still got so many more great questions to ask. That's really insightful so far from Aaron. Now, I want to sort of dive into what it was like being on set of Christopher Robin in just a moment. But as you know, every week, if you listen to the My Generation podcast, we have 5 main features throughout our show as weekly segments. And that is Sammy Bacon and Harry Monday, who come on the show every single Thursday to bring a album and film review. Firstly, we're going to Sammy with his album, and here is the album that he recommends this week.
Hello everyone, what's going on? Sammy Bacon here. You know what's going on today. I'm going to recommend you Brutalism by Idols. Idols, one of the most talked about bands in the world right now, just announced the release of their 3rd album, Ultra Mono. The singles have been somewhat underwhelming. Still a good album, but Brutalism... what do I say about this album? It's scuzzy and disgusting and brutal, heavy post-punk sound. And lyrically, it touches on politics, but also sort of the class divide with snobbiness, with a song like Stendhal Syndrome talking about the snobbiness that somebody can take towards art, or people sort of, I don't know, not getting art, I guess. Also talk about mental health in a song like 1049 Gotho, sexism, and Joe Talbot's vocals on this album are disgusting and guttural and just grim. On the song Divide and Conquer. The only song on this album that I don't particularly like is the last song, Slow Savage. It's a spacey sort of ambient-y closer to the album, and I guess the band kind of thought, hey, let's give the guys a break after what is 40 minutes of pain. But yeah, it's not a bad song, it just feels a bit loose. And Idols, Britism, one of the best debuts that have been released for a while. George Next Distance does have good moments, but like I said a few minutes ago, I do think it's a bit overrated. I think sort of the directness and the naivety gets a bit grating after a while, and the new singles from Ultra Mono haven't been bad, they've just been kind of what I'd expect from them, which is a bit underwhelming, but who knows? Maybe they'll make more sense on the album, but definitely a band worth checking out if you like post-punk and heavy, disgusting sort of guitar-based music. Yeah, see you around.
Thank you for that, Sammy. Once again, we'll tune in with Sammy next week to find his next album recommendation. If you've heard any of the albums he has recommended, please let us know in the comments, whether you're listening on YouTube, SoundCloud or Spotify, what you think of the albums that Sammy has been recommending. And you can also put your own recommendations down there for a chance for him to review those in the future. Now, before we go back to Aaron to move over to what it was like on set on Christopher Robin, Harry Monday brings you a film review feature. And here is the film that Harry thinks you should be watching this week.
All right, Max. I'm going to sully up my nice reputation of picking good, up there movies with a very niche genre movie for anyone who are fans of Paleolithic archaeology here. I'm choosing the movie Iceman. And I don't mean the Asian gangster film. I mean the German movie about the life of a found body that was discovered today over thousands of years ago. The niche little context that you want going into this film is that this body was so perfectly preserved that even the pollen inside his stomach was still alive. It could still be classified. I would like to say that this movie follows true fact, but all of it is interpretation. But all of it's an interpretation that I wanted to see and hear about this man. It's like a fan fiction came to life for the little bit of my heart that just loves the story of what could have been. The basic premise is a man from a village, his village gets slaughtered. While he's out hunting, everything's taken from him, and he just wants revenge. He goes and hunts down that other tribal village, and he goes for them. He goes. The thing that amazes me most about this movie is that it is spoken in an ancient dead language. Completely subtitled. This has no favors to any sort of language or ethnicity out there. This is something that you need to focus on. You cannot look away for 1 second of this story, or you will lose yourself. And that's why I would recommend seeing this as soon as you can.
Thank you for that, Harry. Once again, we'll tune in with Harry next week for his next film review. So, I mean, already we're recommending and championing 1917 and Christopher Robin, but you've got another movie there from Harry as well to go to. So we're now moving back to Aaron. I just wanted to really start with what was really so different about working on Christopher Robin.
Christopher Robin was a much wider set. Obviously, the trench it was long, but there was obviously really tiny and quite tight space. Whereas it was filmed down at Dover Cruise Terminal, and there was an old abandoned train station there. I think it was something like that. Actually, no, it was an old cruise terminal, and they transformed it into a train station back to like the olden times. And that was a great set. That was really, really cool. But that was massive as well. I was inside. I was one of the I was a baker, if I remember rightly, or something like that, and I was selling scones and something like that. It's a scene where, have you seen the film, Max?
Yes, yeah, I saw it when it came out. I haven't seen it since.
Do you know when he buys Winnie the Pooh a balloon?
Yes.
And he's in the train station, and he runs off, and he loses him when he buys him a ticket. That was the whole scene. So we did all those shots. What happened in that sequence, we did. Whereas in 1917, we just did the one shot, and that was good. That was another 5 days, same sort of times. It was get up really early, get ready, and you leave really late because it's a long day of filming. But it wasn't as intense and cold, obviously, because I think if I remember rightly, I did that in summer, in a summertime. So that wasn't as hard, the weather conditions. And again, it's catered really well. I think the director of that film directed one of the James Bond movies. And again, you saw him about a few times, and he was nice. And obviously, it was I can't remember the main actor.
Oh, Ewan McGregor.
Ewan McGregor, that was it. And the lady who's in Captain America, who Captain America likes.
Oh, Hayley Atwell, yeah.
Yeah. She was nice as well. That was all really nice. That was a really good experience, actually.
And did you get to meet them and sort of speak to them at all?
That one we didn't, because there was, like I said, it was a lot wider. And when it's just so to be wherever I was at the opposite side. So if I was on one side of the train track, they was on the other side. So I never got as close to them as I was in the trench scene. But still, you could still hear them and do all their stuff. It was really, really cool to watch. And I tell you what, it's also, I always think would be a good job to get into is the actor's double. Because before the actors come out, you got their double when they're doing all the shots as well. So I think that'd be quite a good job to be a part of.
Well, it's quite a physical movie, so interesting. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that sort of interested me about the cast specifically for this movie, and one thing I quite enjoyed, was actually seeing a lot of faces I recognised from sort of growing up. And as someone who watched Horrible Histories and Sorry I've Got No Head growing up, seeing Simon Farnaby and Nick Mohammed, Nick Mohammed voicing Piglet, that voice, I was just like, oh, wait a minute, I recognise that. And did you get to sort of, I imagine their energy on the set must have been great if you sort of saw them about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. The only other person I saw, I think he must have been doing a shot later on in the film. But he's in Gavin and Stacey. But he was there, so, and he seemed all right. No, they always said hello to all the extras, because I think they just appreciate that we're obviously making a film as well for them.
It's a really joint process, and it's I feel like it's so easy to sort of forget how important extras are, because they sort of build the life of a film around it. And honestly, it's sort of the way I sort of view music and sound design. It's like if an extra's good and doing their job, they almost go unnoticed. It's only when they're bad that they actually get noticed, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there have been a few cases like that. I think I've seen online. I think especially one in Dunkirk. I think there's one where they're all crowded on the bridge, and you see this one extra lift his head up and pull a funny face, which obviously is totally not what you would be doing if you saw a load of German enemy planes coming and attacking for you. So you have got to stay professional when doing a job.
Yeah, and I mean, an example that stood out to me was just in Indiana Jones, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they're in Cairo. There's a moment where a man comes through wearing extremely modern clothing, modern, very not fit for Cairo clothes, and I think he was a part of the crew, just wandering through the shot, and it's the attention to details. And for you then, because obviously inhabiting the role of a baker is very different for you. How do you sort of inhabit these sort of different, almost characterless roles?
Yeah. Well, you obviously have to play with the set, what you've got. I was given a little cart with all these scones, and you just had to make it up. The camera might not have been even anywhere near you, but they said you all going to be seen. And you just had to improvise, really. And that was a whole hard bit about it, because you wasn't really told specific stuff to do. I just thought, what would I do if I was a baker and I was selling these scones? And you had to do it all in silence. So you had to act as if it was all loud speaking and all of that bit, which obviously at the time it wasn't. So it was difficult, but after a few days, or not even a few days, after a few rehearsals, you got the gist of it.
Oh, so interesting. I mean, on my student films, this is the only real thing I've got to compare it to. To try and keep our crew numbers down, we had a scene in a bar where it just made sense for me and the producer to actually just go in as extras and fill in the background just to make the setting feel busier.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
when I got in there, I thought, you know what, I haven't prepared for what it would be like to be, you almost sort of feel like you don't know what to do. And so, or at least I did when I first sort of got into it. But do you find that almost putting sort of a story to the character almost helps you with that?
Yeah, definitely. You have to be prepared to it all. Most of the time, it's you have to know what's going on and have a story behind what you're doing. All the extras have some sort of passion in acting. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there, because you have to act as an actor, as an extra. So you got to have some thought behind it.
And what was it like for you then being directed? Were you being directed by the people at the top, or was in sort of your large groups, or was there sort of a manager for your sort of area?
Well, on Christopher Robin, we didn't have this in 1917 because it was the assistant directors were like helping us and telling us what to do. But in 1917, because it was a mass group of us in a mass area, there was one. I don't know what you would call him. He said he was quite an old guy, and he was like a director of extras, and he worked in loads and loads and loads of films. He was quite a well-known guy in the film industry. I just don't know what his name is. So he was there, and he was telling us all what to do. He was shouting out his orders, telling everyone what to do. And so then when it came, he knew how long the shot was going to be. He said, right, in that time I want you to do that. I want you to go over there. You're in this scenario. Think of what you would do in this scenario. He wouldn't tell us exactly. He'd let us use it. But if there was any like movement, what he wanted us to do, he would tell us. So that was good.
So unique. And how did that sort of compare to Christopher Robin, where obviously he can't sort of project that across to such a large group of people? Is it more sort of, here's your props, here's your job, now go? Yeah,
so like Christopher Robin, he was good at projecting it out to all of us. But with 1917, they just came along and told us what was going on, and just said that was more of a standstill project in 1917 because it was coming through the trench. There were guys who were moving about because it was, for example, dead body carriers, and they'd be walking through the set, and sometimes they would walk past the camera, and that would be a cut there. But a lot of us was in 1917 in the trench was just standing still and just, I don't know. I was, for example, looking at this tin of soup. What I had, I was about to eat it, and they actually gave me a tin of soup. I didn't eat it, but I had it the whole day.
The timing aspect of it is always thoroughly interesting to me, because I rewatched the scene before the podcast, and as you said, there's a lot of movement happening across the camera to create those hidden cuts. And were you given sort of specific timings, so like wait this long before moving, or was it just, here's your sort of general area, just operate in this little space and sort of have this jar you're about to eat?
I wasn't myself, because I was just leaning up against a wall. But there were people who were around me who were given specific timings, and that's why we had to do so many rehearsals, because, like I said, it had to be spot on with the timers. It had to be right. It had to be right in the right place, where you'd be walking. If you were slightly off, then they'd have to do it again. And the thing is, what I also thought, the cameraman on 1917, that was a tough job, especially in those shots, because this one guy who was doing this scene, he walked from the whole of this trench, and I reckon where the start of the trench, I reckon I was about 75% of the way through, so I was near the end, and he was walking all the way through that. And if you remember rightly in it, it's sometimes it's a shot behind them walking, and then sometimes it's a shot in front of them walking, and obviously it's loads of cuts, but between the cuts it wasn't short timing. Sometimes it'd be a long time before the cut would happen.
Yeah, it's thoroughly fascinating that we can do that these days, because I mean the camera they used, and I think it was for the whole movie, but maybe was one or two shots it wasn't, but it was the Arri Alexa Mini Pro, and having the Mini Arri Alexa, I mean that camera, it's an industry standard. It's the one used by most big productions, and over the past decade, the sort of biggest advancement it's been making hasn't been visual quality, it's been getting the camera smaller and smaller and lighter to allow for these things. And obviously it was moving between being handheld, then onto a crane, and then they were craning it through that sort of there was sort of that big sort of hole where they sort of have to drop down in, isn't there, and the camera's sort of swinging across it. Was there any there wasn't too much sort of lavish camera movement though in your bit? It was sort of just weaving between people.
Yeah, but because obviously there was so many people in the trench, it was still a very difficult task. I remember there was a few times where he'd slip because of the mud and of the scene. It's a frustration on everyone's part. Not that at him, but it must be annoying for him because it went so well. And if you slip at one point, that's a shot ended. So there's many moments like that, and you could tell physically after they got a cut. It was like celebrating a goal in football. Everyone was so happy so happy for him because you could see the energy and the drainage it would take out of him, because it was physically exhausting. Because he had one of these things where it wraps over you.
Oh, was it like an easy rig?
Yeah. So he had him on it, and then it was like a pole, and he was controlling it up and down and to the side, but whilst walking with it as well. So as you can imagine, because I think I've seen it on your Instagram, you wear one or something similar to it.
Yeah, if you follow,
you probably know how heavy it is.
Yeah,
are they heavy or are they?
Interestingly, an easy rig. So yeah, if you want to see the photo, if you go to this is just a great way to plug my own Instagram now, max_barrett.official. You can find a picture of me a little while back where I'm wearing an easy rig for our third year production, because I was sort of testing it out when we were booking the kit. And our universities at Canterbury Christchurch have a couple of easy rigs for the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro, which is a great camera. But what it does is it takes all of the weight of the camera and sort of puts it through your sort of torso, so it takes a lot of the strain off of the shoulders and actually can make the camera feel really lightweight. The easy rig is built around making the camera feel as weightless as possible, I think. But even though for me it was all right with the cameras I was using, when you're sort of getting up to those Arri Alexa Mini Pros, it adds an extra weight to it, and I imagine all the extra bits and bobs he had on to keep it stabilized and such.
Yeah.
And even if it's still that weight, you've still got to do all that carrying.
Yeah, definitely. I reckon when they did the shot, and they say, 3, 2, 1, action, it'd probably be a couple of minutes before he actually got to us. So if you're thinking he's going through this trench whilst trying to focus on the twists and turns of the camera, and also the twists and turns of the trench, knowing what bit to step on, and it's a lot to do. So when he got the shot, it was a real big celebration. But again, once they got the shot as well, we just were like, right, retake, we'll do that again. And that was just literally what it was like for the whole 6 days. They'd get so many shots, and just the more the better, innit?
Yeah, that sort of euphoric energy of getting each shot must have just been so gratifying for the team, because like a small shot in a film can feel really good when you get it right, but to do such a big amount must be incredible. One question I did want to ask was, they've said action, and the cameraman's approaching you, but you obviously don't know where yet because he's coming around the corner. What are you sort of thinking in the sort of minute lead up to your moment? Because there's obviously a bit of time where you're just in action, but not acting yet.
Well, funny enough, when we was at a point where we could see down the trench, and when he was coming to us, on our point he literally turned, so we could actually get out of character and relax a little bit, so that we could see him coming down the trench because he wasn't facing us, and as he came round, he turned, then he was in character. So it was a little bit easier for us, but we still had to get it right. We still had to be in character and think, oh Christ, what would it be like at this moment in time, during this time of the war? I mean, they're all thinking they're wanting to go home, and what would I be feeling like at this moment? Would I be feeling ill? What does this soup look like? Would I be wanting to eat this? And if I remember what I went for, I just thought, I'm surely not going to be wanting to eat this soup, because I'm not imagining this soup's going to look the nicest. And by the end of the day, it really did not look nice. And it was freezing. So it got cold really, really quickly. So holding it, looking at it as well, it was disgusting.
Almost suited the performance, though, really.
It did. It helped it out. It helped it out big time.
Oh, so interesting. This is stuff that, I mean, I would never sort of know, even from sort of the top level interviews. I mean, I've watched a lot of interviews for this movie, and Christopher Robin as well. It's the stuff you don't always hear from the sort of boots on the ground of it. But both films have been thoroughly fascinating productions to watch, and both being period pieces as well. So obviously, sort of moving over to Christopher Robin, it being a period piece, what do you think that sort of did for you as an actor?
That was good. That one. As an actor, it was a lot difficult, because a lot more difficult. Because I think when something relates to World War One, the immediate reaction, if you're a part of the soldier, you're not gonna want you as an actor, you're gonna choose it to be not a nice, very situation. So I think that's a little bit easier to get into character. But in this situation as a baker during that time period, it was a bit more difficult to relate to it and get into characters easily, because a lot more research had to go into it. It was the role wasn't as clear, because at the end of the day, I was, as a baker, I was thinking, well, what would a baker look like and do back then that is different to this day.
Interesting. Well, I've still got a few more questions, Aaron, and one thing I do want to ask after we've got our next couple of sections on the show is how to actually get involved in this, if you're interested, because I imagine it's probably the questions on a lot of actors' lips that are tuning into this. But before that, we've got our last 3 weekly features. They come on every single week on the My Generation podcast. It's Emma Cusson, Joe Finnegan, and Tom Axtell. Emma first, though, with her poetry readings. Emma's been a performance poet. Before lockdown, she was performing some of her poems in the Canterbury and Thanet area, and now she's sharing some of her personal poetry work here with us on the show. And here is the poem that Emma would love to share with you this week.
Have you ever met the human embodiment of a cold glass of water on a hot summer's day? So refreshing, no second guessing. Have you ever wanted to fall into someone, not because their arms are wide open ready to catch you, but because you knew their embrace was worth the chase? My naturally messy hair would always find ways of leaving parts of me on you. It would lay dormant and come night tangle and curl around your heart. You're mistaking it for butterflies when you see me, then compromise what you couldn't foresee. I always know I've shown him magic when I catch him smiling. Interrupt his smile, caressing is this season's style. No, don't distract. You're driving, you're guiding, through the softest parts of September, make him remember, then dismember the parts of you that are an offering. What you see in me I am led to believe is just another trick up your sleeve. But I disbelieve what I believe, for I misconceive you giving me a reason to breathe when I thought you was asking me to leave. This poem is called Magic, and I wrote it about the feeling you get when you feel you're falling in love. Not necessarily with a lover. This can be your best friend, a family member, or simply a pet. But the feeling is there.
Thank you for that, Emma. Really appreciate that. Really looking forward to hearing more of your poetry work throughout the weeks here on the My Generation podcast. And you can follow in the description to find links to Emma's photography and poetry account, Autumn Bones, where she shares some other poetry work in a written format over some of her lovely photography. Next we move over to Joe Finnegan. Joe, we've had on the podcast before talking video games. He's obviously done some video game work himself. He did it as a passion project. We've done an episode of it on the show, and you can now tune in to Joe's video game review. He brings a new one every week from different platforms, different styles of games, and here is the one that he thinks you should be playing this week.
Thank you, Max. It's Joe here, and my video game recommendation for this week is Stardew Valley. It's an incredible farming simulation game in which you run your own farm and earn money from growing crops, doing favours for your neighbours in town, along with other activities such as fishing, mining. You even have a section where you can fight monsters, kind of similar to Zelda-style combat. I actually mentioned this game in my Passion Projects episode with Max, which I think was episode 47. I'm just so impressed by how this game was put together so brilliantly by a single person, even the artwork and the music on top of the actual coding. It's just a really good pick-up-and-play game to relax with. You can also play this with up to 3 friends. I'm currently recording this clip in the peak of the lockdown currently going on in the country, and I've just been playing Stardew with a friend of mine a couple of hours every week, and it's just so great being able to spend a few hours just chilling out, forgetting about everything that's going on in the world around us right now. Stardew is currently available on all modern consoles, so PC, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and it should cost you around £12.
Thank you for that, Joe, and we'll tune in with Joe once again next week to find out what the next game he reviews is. Please let us know on YouTube, Soundcloud and Spotify what you think of the weekly features here on the show as well. And before we go back to Aaron, Tom Axtell brings pirates profiles and facts to the show every week. I mentioned Horrible Histories earlier, and it's a show that resonated with me as a kid growing up, and every time I hear Tom talking pirate stuff I always think back to that show. And so please do enjoy this week's pirate fact or profile with Tom.
Hello and welcome to Tom's prolific pirate profiles. Today we are talking about Henry Avery. Avery was born in the mid 17th century somewhere near Plymouth. Around 1694 Avery joined a ship called the Duke or the Charles II in the employ of the Spanish. The Spanish, in charge, were reportedly unkind to the English, and so they planned a mutiny, with Avery at the head. The captain, being a heavy drinker, fell asleep, and the mutiny occurred. Avery woke the captain, saying, "You must know that I am the captain of this ship now, and this is my cabin. Therefore you must walk out. I am bound to Madagascar with the design of making my own fortune." Avery allowed the captain to board a longboat and leave. They renamed this ship the Fancy, and swiftly sailed to Madagascar. There, he joined with some other ships and sailed towards the Arabian coast. On their journey, they spotted a ship flying the Mogul's colours, the Mogul of India, that is. This ship was the Ganges Savai, and it was carrying pilgrims who were on their way to Mecca. The ship carried many riches, which were to be presented when they arrived. The pirates attacked. Partnering with other pirates, including the St. Thomas II, Avery attacked the Ganges Savai, one of India's biggest ships. Avery was lucky, and although the Ganges Savai was a bigger ship and had more crew, the first cannon blast destroyed the main mast, and the Indians fell into disarray. The total loot collected totaled up to between £325,000 and £600,000. The loot was planned to be shared, but Avery and his crew snuck away in the night, leaving the other pirates without their shares. After this, the pirate Avery and his crew sailed to New Providence Island, Nassau in the Caribbean, where they parted ways, rich men. Unlike most pirates, Avery was set with the bounty he had won, and was now content with hiding from the authorities, who had started a manhunt for him and his crew. He was so successful that there is debate as to what happened next. It is most likely that he sailed to Ireland, where he lost his fortune to merchants promising to turn his gold and diamonds into money, and most think he died penniless. Some, however, think that he may have founded a pirate haven in Madagascar. Either way, he died somewhere around 1696. And that was the story of Henry Avery.
Thank you so much for that, Tom. We'll tune in with Tom once again next week to find out what the next pirate fact or profile is. Plenty more stories for you to hear about here on the My Generation podcast in the world of pirates from Tom. Now, moving back to Aaron to sort of bring to a close the podcast. But before we do, we've got still a couple of really important questions. Firstly, leading with, how do you get involved in something as cool as working on 1917 and Christopher Robin?
Well, it's easy. It's anyone can do it. You don't need grades or anything like that. You just literally sign up for it. Some websites might ask you for a fee because it's like an agency. It's an extra agency. Basically, search up on the internet extra casting agencies, and whatever one you pick for, you basically click onto it, and they'll ask you to fill out lots of details. So, like your like height details, your chest size, and all stuff like that, your coloured hair, where you come from, and all that. Because obviously, they will look at your profile, and when you're given your headshots and your full body shots, they'll be after specific people. For example, for 12 Years a Slave, they wouldn't pick any, if they was after extras to play slaves during the American slave times, they wouldn't choose white people. They choose black actors, for example. So they choose you specifically for the role.
And for the two pieces you've done, obviously being very history-driven pieces, they're, thinking you can fit in with the era that they are covering, which is obviously quite important for getting, the historical accuracy. Yeah,
definitely. And they're really good with equality in acting as they should do. And in this time they should be, because everyone should have a right. And they do look into it properly, and I don't think anyone who's feeling nervy about being chosen, if you feel you're not right for the part, then totally ignore that, because everyone's right for the part, no matter what gender, no matter what colour skin you are, or whatever, because at the end of the day, you're an extra, you're an actor, and they'll be looking for the best people for the role. And there was multi cultures during 1917, because they researched into World War One, and there was all these different soldiers involved. So basically, don't ever feel like you can't do it because of that. And basically, they get all the details. They ask you stuff what you feel comfortable doing. So it'll be like, are you comfortable getting naked on set? Are you comfortable kissing another man? Are you comfortable kissing a lady? Are you comfortable dressing up as a lady? Are you comfortable doing... Or literally, so much detail has been involved, because the more you choose yes, the more options they're giving you. And that's basically it. They might ask for a fee for to put you first in line, for the extra call-ups, but I never did it. They just sent me a message saying, "Oh, we've got a film being filmed in 2 weeks' time. We want you to be a part of it. Are you good to do it or not?" And you just say yes or no within the next 10 minutes, and then you're a part of it if you can do it or not. As easy as that. And then you have a costume fitting a couple of weeks before filming. They give you a haircut. They pay you money for having a haircut. That's what I can't get over.
Wow.
I think this is crazy. I thought so.
And now we're in lockdown, and I haven't had a haircut in like 3 months. I'm very glad my show doesn't involve cameras.
No. But yes, as easy as that is. And you make so many friends. You meet so many different people, different cultures, so many people from everywhere in the world, which is great.
Yeah, I think
really,
film
really...
has that ability to sort of bring in people that you otherwise would never get to meet. Like just from my student film, we had an Italian actress and just sort of hearing her stories from living in Italy and acting in Italy, just completely different to anything I'd sort of experienced, and the stuff that she talked about, and it was the same echoed across all set. Just having different people just really, really ramps up a project because you just learn so much.
Yeah, definitely.
I did actually want to ask about actually being on these two specific projects. What are maybe some things that being an extra people might not expect? So I imagine there are a lot of sort of normal things people think that being an extra involves with, such as waiting around, getting the catering and all that. But is there something about being an extra that you think sort of the mainstream might not necessarily know?
I think the preparation, I don't think people realise what goes into it, being an extra. There's a lot of, like I said, they do really look at your profile, and they specifically think, oh, what would he be good at? When you're putting your CV in there, don't just think, oh, they'll just look at my face. They look at your acting skills, they look at your experience, and they will choose you for the greater role. And it might be a role what is speaking, and that's even better because you get, obviously, number one, you get paid a lot more money if you're speaking. And obviously you're in the limelight more, but that is, you have to audition for that. If people think it's just a bit of a DOS, then you're totally wrong, because it's hard work. And I think a lot of people being an extra, oh, you're just going to walk back and forwards, that's easy. It's not easy, because you have to doing that all day, doing the same thing, keeping the same energy the whole 12 hours. That is a lot harder than you think. So that is one thing I would definitely say, and be prepared with in there when it comes to doing these extra works. And before, you've got to mentally prepare for the hours, because if you think, 5 days, that'd be all right, doing 12-hour shifts of it, that'd be fine. It's a lot harder than you think. And it's not, there's no time of when you one day you might start at 6:30, and then the next day you might start at 4:30. It is, they will tell you that 11 o'clock on the night before. So I remember I finished filming at Christopher Robin once. I didn't get home till probably 12. Had to wait. I knew I probably had to wake up in 3 hours time.
Wow.
But I just got told as I got back the dates, the time what I had to be in. I had to be in at 4:30, so I had to get up in 2 hours time.
Wow.
So you have to be prepared for that. Then it doesn't bother me, because I've been given a job, I'm getting paid for it, and it's something I like doing. But if you're just doing it for the doss about and just doing it for the money, then I just wouldn't even bother going, because you've got, like I said, yes, people do it for the money, but you have to do it because you enjoy it. You have to do it because you're there because you want to make the film. You want to make the film as good as it can be, because you have to. There's no film's good without extras in it.
Yeah, and they add just that life to the backdrop of a film, which just goes so unnoticed. I think I just had sort of two more questions then, really, Aaron, to close up this episode. It's been such a fascinating chat, and being someone in film, I mean, I could talk about this all day. And we might have to do a part 2 if we get lots of questions as well. And as looking to the future, you take on more once sort of lockdown's lifted. And it's actually quite interesting, sort of the film industry, what we're having to do with lockdown and social distancing on set and everything. And there's loads of guidelines out. So if you're into film, look at those guidelines. They might be changing when you're listening, but they are out there. I did want to know, though, what has been your favourite sort of moment on set? If you could just choose one moment to take home with you as the one that was just the most powerful moment on set, what was it for you?
I think I never forget the time when I was looking on the 1917 set, and I could see all these bodies, these fake bodies, these fake horses being made, and I thought, maybe this is for somewhere else, like where they're doing this. And I thought another thing, because I thought they wouldn't be putting it in where we are. But I remember getting on set, seen part of it where it looked like it had a bomb on it, and so it all been blown up. I looked over there, and there was literally dead bodies and horses, and it looked so real. And you look down, and it just goes on for miles of no man's land. All these the detail and the barbed wire and the crosses and that. That that was the most powerful moment, because it's amazing what they can do. All the setting, the crew can do these days, and it just makes a film. It was incredible.
Practical effects are just so incredibly crazy. I think Ridley Scott's another director who's sort of big on those physical sets, because obviously we've sort of been through sort of a green screen phase recently with cinema and actors sort of acting against nothing, and but there's sort of loads of different ways people are doing it these days. So you've got the way 1917 used real people, you've got how Avengers Endgame was almost all CGI but still looked incredible. And then you've got if you've seen Star Wars The Mandalorian, they shot using a completely different technique. What they did for that is it was all done in sort of these small, well, not small, but rooms, which instead of green screens, they actually had the locations they were in on the walls, and the locations moved with the camera so that they looked like three-dimensional spaces, when in actual fact that they were just LED screens, which is why in The Mandalorian it actually looks like things are reflecting off of surfaces, and it looks a bit more believable than green screen, and that's what makes that show look so good. So that's something that I don't think people expected from the direction we're going in, but it gives you something physical to act off of, which I think is probably what makes that moment so powerful for you, being able to see it in front of you, right?
Definitely. No, I totally agree with you, Max. It was experience that you would never forget.
And and that realism, like I can just imagine. I mean, we for our student film, one of the places we shot in was Canterbury Christchurch has a sort of a hospital kind of ward where they do sort of training, and we were filming in there and making it look like a real hospital. We had a hospital scene in our film, and watching the footage back, it feels so real. And even though that was just a smaller scale version, making this place that on the outside just looks like a sort of student place to be, it doesn't look like a real hospital, even though all the beds and everything is proper and it's a really great facility. Bringing that to life is just something else. So
definitely.
And obviously, even though we're sort of in lockdown, is this something that you plan to keep doing in the future? I imagine this is just going to go from strength to strength.
Definitely. I think it's one where it helps you do whatever you want to do as well, like in life. And you can carry on doing your jobs, but if something comes up, you can always do it. So it always be there. And it's, like I said, it's something you can do at any age as well. Even if you're a lot older. When I did Christopher Robin, there was a lot of elderly people there, and I'm talking like, I reckon they was in their 80s. So it proves that you can do it at any age and have a good time with it.
Yeah, I can only echo that. Well, Aaron, obviously we've had Aaron on the show before. It was episode 80, so not too long ago, talking about his swing singing and the fact he was on Britain's Got Talent to do it. So if you want to hear, because Aaron's a fascinating guy, he's got lots of strings to his bow. If you want to hear more of his story, but from his musical side of it, he's alluded to it sometimes in the show, go back to episode 80. It's a very fascinating chat about what it's like actually being on stage at Britain's Got Talent, and also the Royal Albert Hall, I believe, as well. So, Aaron, before we close this week's episode of the show, I just wanted to ask what you think you've learned by talking about your film extra work here on today's show.
I think what I've learned is, obviously from the knowledge of you understand it a lot more than I do. I love filming that, but talking about it gives me an understanding of what's going on. Like you said, you knew all about these cameras. I didn't have a Scooby-Doo what these cameras were, but until you explained it, it makes me understand it a lot more. Like you said, The Mandalorian, I didn't even know about that. I didn't even know they could do that. I knew about green screen and that, but that was it. So all these new stuff, it just makes me want to research more into it all, really.
Yeah, and I think that goes both ways, because I can understand the technicalities of it, but firstly, I need more experience to put it into practice, and secondly, I can't understand your role. So I think it's a mutual respect of the difficulties, and I think that The Mandalorian's a thoroughly interesting example to look at because they have real extras in The Mandalorian, but mixed in with these, it's much easier to act against because you're acting against real spaces. But they aren't real. They are LED panels. They are displaying just pixels and light. But because you are seeing the light's actually hitting you, it just changes it. Have you ever, just another off the cuff question, I wanted to ask if you'd experienced any green screen acting at all?
I haven't, but we could have when I was there when I could see it. When I could see it when it was being filmed in Christopher Robin, because there was some bits what was a part of the green screen. So they must have used it as another part of the set. So I was there watching it and how it went on. And it was massive how they do it. It's a lot bigger than I thought. But like when watching, I've seen like behind the scenes of, I think it was Harry Potter. And there's scenes in that, they use a lot of green screen in that to see the massive sets. So it's very interesting to watch.
Yeah, adds so much scale to it. And I think of acting on a green screen versus what they did for The Mandalorian versus real sets are all completely different, but very fascinating how they all work. I mean, to sort of bring it full circle for me, the watching Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, the episode 3, that was the film that got me into cinema, and watching the behind the scenes and how they did the green screen on it wowed me, and that's what made me want to take this up as a thing full time. So even though green screen I think is something we're moving away from, not fully, it's going to have its place, it's always going to be there, but we're using different things to get full environments like The Mandalorian. It'll always hold a place in my heart, that sort of different and weird style of acting against nothing, and that's almost requires even more talent. Well, before we close, I do want to punt for questions, because if you want Aaron back on the show to answer your questions about being on a film set, please get in touch with us. We have a Facebook page, it's the My Generation Podcast. The links are always down in the description, wherever you're listening, because I imagine Aaron will be there to take all your questions, won't you?
Yes, I definitely will be, Max. Definitely.
Lovely, lovely stuff. And Aaron, before we go, let's remind people, where can they find your singing work if they ever want to get in touch with you or follow you and support there?
So it's on Instagram and Facebook and on YouTube, and they all come under Aaron Frith Singer.
Follow that. I'll make sure it's also in the description as well, so you've got all the chances to go and find Aaron's music. He sings swing and jazz, incredible genres that I think obviously deserve more people talking about them today. It's just so beautiful and romantic, those genres. And you can hear all about that on episode 80 if you go back there. But that does conclude this week's episode of the show. Thanks so much for coming on, Aaron.
Thank you, Max. Thank you for having me.
No worries. It's great to have Aaron back, as always. Coming up on the show in the future, Sammy Bacon, who does our music reviews, is going to do a deeper dive into music. We are going to be doing Music Across the Generations, obviously, coming soon. Dorothea Ficini, the actress I alluded to earlier from our student film, we've had her on talking about acting. She's coming back on the show. And we recently just spoke with Dan Collins about board games. I'm expanding the conversation about board games. That subject's going nowhere, and we've got more episodes about it coming soon. And hopefully some more film stuff, as we've had so much great film stuff in the past few weeks, and I just want that to continue. So that's this week's episode of the show, and it is a goodbye from Aaron.
See you later, guys.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and we'll tune in with you next Thursday for the next episode of the My Generation Podcast.